Good morning and welcome to the Public Service Commission of South Carolina. We are here today for a hearing in docket 2022-4-G. First order of business is let's take a roll call of commissioners. Present in the hearing room, we have Commissioner Jay Williams, Vice Chair Powers, Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Caston, and Chair Belser. Appearing virtually, we have Commissioner Irvin and Commissioner C. Williams. Now recognize our staff attorney, Ms. Mosier, to read the docket.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, commissioners and parties. We're here today for the proceeding in docket number 2022-4-G regarding the annual review of purchase gas adjustment and gas purchasing policies of Piedmont Natural Gas Company, Incorporated. The proceeding was scheduled for today, July 14th, 2022 at 10 a.m. It's my understanding that all parties participating in this matter are available either in person or virtually, and they are ready to proceed. The docket is in order. Thank you.
We'll now take appearances from the parties. Who's representing Piedmont Natural Gas?
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Mindy McGrath with the law firm of Troutman, Pepper, Hamilton, Sanders. I'm here today appearing with me virtually, our local counsel, Melissa Butler, also with the law firm of Troutman, Pepper. I am here on behalf of Piedmont Natural Gas, and thank you all for the opportunity to present.
Thank you, Ms. McGrath, and welcome to you and Ms. Butler. And who's representing the Office of Regulatory Staff?
Good morning, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Powers, and members of the Commission. Nicole Given on behalf of the Office of Regulatory Staff. Present with me in the hearing room is Chris Huber. It's good to see you all.
Thank you, Ms. Given, and welcome to you and Mr. Huber as well. Any preliminary matters before we begin with testimony?
Madam Chair, one preliminary matter for Piedmont. One of our witnesses, Ms. Tomlinson, is appearing virtually, so we would request that we present her individually and then followed by our next two witnesses who are here in the hearing room, Mr. Patton and Mr. Brees. We would like to present them as a panel if that's acceptable to the Commission.
That'll be fine. Thank you very much. Anything else?
One preliminary matter from ORS, Madam Chair. The parties in this proceeding have reached a settlement agreement, which was filed in the docket on July 7th. I have hard copies. I realize that you all might have electronic copies in front of you, but if anyone would like a hard copy, I have them. Just let me know and I can, with your permission, give them to Ms. Wheat.
Why don't you present those to Ms. Wheat, and you are offering that as an exhibit at this time?
I am, and I was going to give just a brief introduction of the settlement agreement, just an overview.
Okay.
Permission to approach Ms. Wheat?
Please.
Thank you.
Please wait just a minute.
Of course.
She can only do one thing at a time. I'm fine. You ready? Okay. Ms. Given?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to note that the settlement agreement was freely and voluntarily entered into by both parties, and I'd like to thank Piedmont's counsel for their strong communication and collaboration and professionalism in reaching the settlement agreement. Company witness Tomlinson will primarily be responsible for providing support for the settlement agreement and addressing the determinations made by ORS during the review period with respect to gas purchasing policies and practices, the adherence to gas cost recovery provisions of the company's gas tariff, administration of the company's hedging program, and the end period balances for the deferred gas cost account. The parties have agreed to stipulate the pre-filed direct testimony and exhibits of company witnesses Tomlinson and Patton, as well as ORS witness Sullivan, and the pre-file direct testimony of ORS witness Michael Seaman Wynn and company witness Todd Brees. With respect to setting the gas cost recovery factors, the parties have agreed to accept the calculations of the purchased gas over collection for the review period as set forth in Exhibit 1 to the settlement agreement. And at this time, I would move that the settlement agreement and its exhibit be entered into the record of this proceeding as a composite hearing exhibit.
The settlement agreement with its attached, is it called Exhibit 1 or A? Settlement
Exhibit
agreement
1.
Exhibit number 1 will be marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 1 and received into the evidence of the case.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and no further preliminary matters from the Office of Regulatory Staff.
Thank you. Ms. McGrath?
Yes, Madam Chair. If it's acceptable, I would move over to this podium.
That's fine. Please feel free to go to the podium. I think as attorneys, we're all accustomed to standing to address rather than sitting. I know that it can feel kind of funny to sit down and address the tribunal. I don't know that we can hear you. There we go. You got the light now.
Got it? Okay. Piedmont calls Mary Beth Tomlinson.
Ms. Tomlinson, please, the court reporter will swear you in just a moment.
If you would raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Ms. Tomlinson, could you please state your name, business address, and occupation?
My name is Mary Beth Tomlinson. My business address is 4720 Piedmont Road Drive, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28210. I'm employed by Duke Energy Corporation as the manager of gas accounting for Piedmont Natural Gas Company.
Thank you, Ms. Tomlinson. Are you the same Mary Beth Tomlinson that pre-filed direct testimony on June 2nd, 2022, consisting of 3 pages and 2 exhibits marked MBT-1 and MBT-2?
Yes, I am.
Was that testimony and were those exhibits prepared by you or under your direction?
Yes, they were.
Do you have any corrections to your testimony or exhibits?
No, I do not.
And if I asked you the same questions that are set forth in your testimony while you're on the stand today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Madam Chair, Piedmont would ask that Ms. Tomlinson's pre-file direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that her exhibits marked MBT-1 and MBT-2 be entered into the record as a composite hearing exhibit.
Ms. Tomlinson's direct pre-file direct testimony will be entered into the record as if read orally from the stand. Ms. Tomlinson's exhibits MBT-1 and MBT-2 will be a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 2 and received into the evidence of the hearing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Tomlinson, have you prepared a summary of your testimony?
Yes, I have.
And can you please provide that for the commission?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the commission. The purpose of my direct testimony is to describe Piedmont's gas cost and hedging plan accounting data and end of period balances for the review period, which is April 1st, 2021 through March 31st, 2022 in this proceeding. Pursuant to prior commission directives, Piedmont maintains a gas cost deferred account in which it records on a monthly basis its gas cost expenses, amounts of gas costs recovered, and deferrals. For this review period, Piedmont's end of period balance in the purchased gas deferred account was an over collection of $5,251,882.02. The ORS has conducted an audit of the entries of Piedmont's gas cost deferred account relevant to the review period in this proceeding. A summary of the monthly activity in Piedmont's gas cost deferred account is attached to my testimony as Exhibit MBT-1. Piedmont also maintains a hedging account in which it records the expenses, gains, and losses associated with its hedging plan. ORS also reviewed and audited this account activity as part of this proceeding. A summary of the activity in this account is attached to my testimony as Exhibit MBT-2. No issues were discovered in the ORS audit of Piedmont's gas cost deferred account or hedging account. Accordingly, subsequent to the filing of my direct testimony, Piedmont and ORS entered into a settlement agreement. The settlement agreement was reached after a full and complete audit by ORS of Piedmont's gas purchasing and gas cost accounting activities for the review period and direct negotiations between ORS and Piedmont with respect to those activities. The settlement reflects the mutual agreement that 1, Piedmont's gas purchasing policies and practices during the review period were reasonable and prudent. 2, Piedmont properly adhered to the gas cost recovery provisions of its gas tariff and relevant commission orders during the review period. 3, Piedmont managed its hedging plan during the review period in a reasonable and prudent manner consistent with commission orders. And 4, the end of period balances for Piedmont's hedging account and gas cost deferred account are those reflected in my pre-filed direct testimony and exhibits. Piedmont believes that the Commission's approval of the settlement agreement is in the interest of Piedmont and in the public interest, and that it addresses the concerns of the using and consuming public while preserving the financial integrity of Piedmont. Accordingly, Piedmont respectfully requests that the Commission approve the settlement agreement as filed. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Ms. Tomlinson is available for questions from the Commission.
Thank you, Ms. McGrath. Office of Regulatory Staff?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Commissioners, questions for Ms. Tomlinson? Commissioners? Ms. Tomlinson, I'm looking at the both the settlement agreement Exhibit 1 and your Exhibit MBT-1, and the last line, well, the line under the boxes where it talks about monthly interest rate. How is the interest rate determined? Because I notice that it changes every month.
It is based on the Wall Street Journal 10-year Treasury rate, and then plus 65 basis points.
Okay.
So it changes each month.
And is that from the RSA? Is that the 65 basis? Is that determined from that?
I believe so, but I am not positive.
Okay. And in the months where there is a credit, how does the interest, does that flow back to the customers at that point?
It just becomes part of the total account, and so as we change the benchmark, it flows through back to the customer through their benchmark rate. Okay.
And I noticed in your summary you mentioned the phrase "after a full and complete audit by ORS." That's not a like a financial audit. That's more of a regulatory audit. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, it's not like a CPA conducting an audit so that they could write an opinion on the books and records.
No, they're just looking from a regulatory standpoint.
Okay. And what is your understanding of the ORS audit? As far as what are they looking for?
On a monthly basis, we send them all of our work papers and support papers that go into each month of my exhibit number 1. And they go through each piece of information. And if they have questions, they ask us that on a monthly basis. And then at the end of the year, they pull samples and ask questions, and we provide them with all that information.
Would it be fair to say that the type of audit that is the regulatory audit is to ensure that the items are correctly listed and that the accounts, there's no mistake putting this invoice in an account when it should go in another account, that kind of audit?
Yes.
Okay.
That's how I take it.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate you responding to my questions this morning. Ms. McGrath, any redirect?
No redirect, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ms. Tomlinson, thank you for your testimony this morning. You may stand down.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Ms. McGrath, next witness.
Madam Chair, I would call Todd Brees and Jeff Patton to the stand, and we'd like to present them as a panel, if acceptable.
That's fine.
Thank you.
If you would raise your right hands, please, and you may need to turn on your mics. That's good. No? Try to get one more time. Okay, you're on. Both you're on. Okay. Please raise your right hands. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Brees, I'll start with you.
Ms. McGrath, I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you pull that microphone a little bit closer?
Sure, no problem. Is this better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Mr. Brees, I'll start with you. I'll ask that you state your name, business address, and occupation.
My name is Todd Brees, and my business address is 4720 Piedmont Road Drive, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28210. I am employed by Duke Energy Corporation as the manager of natural gas trading and optimization for Piedmont Natural Gas Company.
Thank you. And are you the same Todd Brees who pre-filed direct testimony in this proceeding on June 2nd, 2022, consisting of 18 pages and no exhibits?
Yes.
And was this testimony prepared by you or under your direction?
Yes.
Do you have any corrections to your testimony today?
No.
And if I asked you the same questions today that are in your testimony while you're on the stand today, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Madam Chair, Piedmont would ask that the 18 pages of direct testimony of Piedmont witness Todd Brees, filed on June 2nd, 2022, be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Brees's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if read from the stand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Brees, have you prepared a summary of your testimony?
Yes.
And would you provide that for the commission, please?
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. The purpose of my testimony is to describe Piedmont's gas purchasing policies and the company's hedging activity during the review period for this proceeding. During the review period, Piedmont continued its use of a best cost approach to purchasing gas. This approach involves 5 components: the price of gas, the security of gas supply, the flexibility of gas supply, gas deliverability, and supplier relationships. Each of these factors is discussed in detail in my testimony. Collectively, these components establish a standard for purchasing gas that Piedmont has used successfully for many years and which has been reviewed and found prudent on all occasions in South Carolina and any other state jurisdictions in which Piedmont operates. Most of Piedmont's primary gas supplies are purchased under arrangements that are standard in the industry and which involve the payment of reservation fees for firm supplies priced at market-based indices. However, Piedmont also purchases short-term supplies in the spot market at market-based prices when necessary to meet customers' needs during non-critical periods. My testimony describes the various new supply arrangements the company entered into during the review period and explains the company's position regarding the current U.S. supply situation. My testimony also discusses the steps the company has taken to manage gas costs, such as utilizing the company's hedging plan as an insurance policy to reduce gas cost volatility to its customers. Piedmont's hedging activities for the review period in this proceeding resulted in a net economic benefit to customers of approximately 91 cents per month. In summary, my testimony supports the conclusion that Piedmont's review period gas costs were prudently incurred and the company managed its hedging program in compliance with prior commission orders. Thank you.
Thank you. And turning to Mr. Patton, would you please state your name, business address, and occupation for the commission?
My name is Jeffrey Patton. My name is Jeffrey Patton. My business address is 4720 Piedmont Road Drive, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28210. I'm employed by Duke Energy Corporation and manage pipeline services on behalf of Piedmont Natural Gas Company.
Thank you. And are you the same Jeff Patton who pre-filed direct testimony in this proceeding on June 2nd, consisting of 15 pages and 12 exhibits that were marked JCP-1A through JCP-7?
Yes.
And was the testimony and the exhibits, were they prepared at your direction or by you?
Yes.
And do you have any changes to your testimony or the exhibits?
No, I do not.
And if I asked you the same questions that are set forth in your testimony, would your answers here today be the same?
Yes.
Madam Chair, Piedmont asks that Mr. Patton's pre-filed direct testimony be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that his exhibits marked JCP 1A through JCP-7 be marked and entered into the record as a composite hearing exhibit.
Mr. Patton's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if read from the stand, and Mr. Patton's pre-filed direct exhibits JCP 1A through JCP 7, including several other subparts, will be marked as a hearing, marked as a hearing exhibit, composite exhibit 3, and received into the evidence of this case.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Patton, have you prepared a summary of your testimony?
Yes, I have.
And can you please provide that for the commission?
Sure. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. The purpose of my testimony is to present the current and projected market requirements of Piedmont's South Carolina customers during the review period in this proceeding, and the capacity acquisition policies and practices the company employs to serve Piedmont's South Carolina customers. My testimony presents the inputs and the calculations utilized by the company to determine the design day needs of its system and how we, as a company, are prepared to meet the projected firm customer requirements. My testimony and supporting exhibits demonstrate that the company has and will continue to provide safe and reliable service to its firm customer base during design day conditions. My testimony also discusses how Piedmont utilizes the best cost methodology to acquire incremental capacity to meet projected growth, and discusses how Piedmont plans to supply its estimated future growth requirements during the next 5 years, beginning with the 2022 to 2023 winter season. Of particular note is that Piedmont recently secured additional incremental firm pipeline service along 2 transportation paths on Transco as part of Transco's Southside Reliability Enhancement Project, which is targeted to be placed in service on December 1st, 2024. Finally, I also described the efforts undertaken by Piedmont at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, commonly referred to as FERC, to ensure that Piedmont's interstate transportation and storage services are reasonably priced. Piedmont routinely intervenes and actively participates in matters before FERC that could have a material impact on the cost paid by Piedmont's South Carolina customers for upstream transportation and storage capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Madam Chair, Mr. Brees and Mr. Patton are available for questions from the Commission.
Thank you. Office of Regulatory Staff, any questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No questions for this panel of witnesses.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions for either witness? Commissioner, which one? Vice Chair Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to both of you. I just had a couple of questions for Mr. Priest. And as far as your testimony, I want to compliment you because I believe the way it's laid out, it was like a college course or a very good learning thing for me. You did a good job with that. I'm just going to ask, with all the volatility and uncertainty right now with gas just all over the place, is it harder, certainly harder now to negotiate swing supply and temporary orders, is it not?
Yes, we are seeing that a lot of market participants aren't willing to provide supply contracts like they have in the past, but we're hopeful that we'll be able to get all of our firm contracts in place prior to the winter season.
And one thing I just wanted to understand was if you could explain a little bit about liquid trading points. I kind of got lost in there somewhere.
Sure. So, for example, we have a lot of capacity on Transco, is our main pipeline that serves the South Carolina area. And there's several pooling points that run from the Gulf all the way up to New York, and we have capacity that runs along the entire pipeline. And so those pooling points are generally where a lot of gas comes in from multiple interconnects, and suppliers and producers are able to provide large volumes of supply at each of those points. And those points are typically the primary receipt points on our capacity, or they're considered firm in path on our capacity, so that we can make firm deliveries to our city gates in South Carolina.
So trading points are a little bit like short-term contracts or some sort of guarantee that,
Yeah, we can purchase volumes at these trading points in the short-term spot market, or we can also contract long-term deals, or winter-only or summer-only or year-round deals at those locations. So it's can be in the spot market, but also term as well.
I guess you can't go a couple of days without looking to see what the prices are, can you?
Sure can. Yeah, it's been a roller coaster here as of late.
Again, thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Caston.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Mr. Brees, on page 4, last sentence of your direct testimony, you state that the marketplace for pipeline capacity service is limited, with little to no unused capacity available during periods of high demand. Something like that. I don't know if that was I paraphrased probably. But in your opinion, do you think there is a need for additional pipeline capacity?
Yes, so that would probably be more in Jeff's area, because he kind of handles the capacity contracting for those capacity contracts. So I'll probably let him answer that.
Sure. To respond to that question, is there a need for more capacity? I think you have to approach it from a couple of different perspectives. I think, based on the exhibits I have, I think Piedmont holds sufficient capacity and transportation storage to serve our firm customers. I would say, in general, from a market perspective, off Transco in Zone 5, which is the area in which Piedmont serves, from South Carolina to North Carolina. That area is typically highly utilized and constrained from a just overall market perspective. And so I would believe that incremental capacity through Transco Zone 5 would be needed to alleviate constraints. But from Piedmont's perspective, we feel that we're comfortable with the amount of capacity and transportation that we hold.
So that's kind of a segue then into some other questions I had. I want to make sure I understand. Now, you said you feel comfortable with where Piedmont is. Is that either the existing pipelines or the pipelines you have installed or installing your existing infrastructure?
Sure. So yes, that's from an existing perspective.
Okay.
Piedmont holds contracts with Transco and other interstate pipelines to bring supply to our city gates. And so those contracts are in place and are based on facilities that have been in service, particularly on Transco, for many years.
So, in your opinion, which type is specifically most needed among those types, like the interstate versus interstate, transportation versus storage, none of the above?
I think it's a mix. I mean, I think overall, if you look at Piedmont's portfolio, we hold both transportation, to redeliver supply from these trading points that Todd mentioned to our city gates, but also we hold storage and able to store natural gas in the summer and be able to withdraw it from the winter during periods of peak demand. And so I think we hold a good balance of both to be able to meet those needs of our customers, not only on the peak days, but also throughout the winter and all year long.
So with the canceled Atlantic Coast Pipeline, would that have provided more capacity for Piedmont?
Yeah, so yes, you're right. So in July of 2020, Atlantic Coast Pipeline canceled their project, which Piedmont had contracted for pipeline capacity on that project. And since that project was canceled, it does mention my testimony, and I mentioned my summary, how we've contracted with Transco for the Southside Reliability Enhancement Project in order to bring, and that project takes two purposes. One is to bring supply over from Transco's main line over to eastern North Carolina to Piedmont Service Territory, where we can deliver that supply into our parts of our system, I would say in the eastern part, and as well as it provides a firm path to our Pine Needle LNG storage that we've contracted with to our city gate in order to provide a reliable path going forward, given the constraints that we have seen in Transco and Zone 5.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand all that based on the question I've asked. Relative to interstate lines, intrastate lines, transportation, storage, are you saying that we don't need any more, it's fine, or you're handling it? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but
Sure.
is everything hunky-dory, or should there be more lines, interstate, intrastate, storage?
Sure. Yeah, so I take that from two perspectives. Today, going into this winter, we're comfortable with the amount of interstate transportation storage we have to meet our firm customer needs. We did identify a need in the future as our to support growth that we needed more transportation capacity interstate, and that drove the need to contract with Transco for the Southside Reliability Enhancement Project that's targeted for late 2024 in service.
Okay, then from the perspective of planning, short-term, long-term, knowing that you're good for the next year, that's good. But I suspect, a lot of folks are probably going to want gas beyond next year.
That's right.
So, short-term, mid-term, long-term, and I think you just answered that. You're okay going into this year. In the future, all of the above should be enhanced.
Yes, we project growth. We've seen growth over the past numerous years of load in our service territories, and so we're also projecting that growth going forward. And as our customer base grows and we have more demand due to that growth over time, we look for the right opportunities and the need to, contract for additional transportation and storage in order to meet that growth over time.
So do you know if that future need and future growth is unique to Piedmont Natural Gas, or is that fairly common amongst?
I think it's fairly common, definitely in the region, South Carolina and North Carolina, given the economic climate and the growth of population, and we are seeing growth, and we would project that other similar situated LDCs would see similar growth.
And I'm not trying to leave you out, Mr. Priest. You jump in anytime you feel like you need to. Matter of fact, page 8 of your direct testimony, you talk about the greatest challenges in applying the company's best cost gas purchasing policy. And you go on to say future availability and pricing of gas supplies will be affected by various things. Whoever can best answer this, where the industry or market or oil gas, where is it currently relative to that, and where do you see it in the near term and long term relative to those greatest challenges you talked about, oil and gas exploration, development, and so forth?
Yes, I think the challenges are going to continue. Obviously, right now we've kind of got the perfect storm that's causing gas prices to rise. You've got global economic uncertainty, the crisis in Ukraine and Russia. Coal usually displaces natural gas, but there's low inventory of coal and high price coal. LNG exports have been on the rise, and You've also got strong domestic demand. It's been extremely hot summer, lots of power generation, and production has been relatively flat. So that's what's currently going on. Hopefully, that production will increase, and looking at the futures prices in 3 years, they are forecasted to come down a few dollars. So hopefully we won't be seeing the same challenges today that at that time, or that we're seeing today in 3 years from now.
Why do you think that production at this point in time has been flat?
So we've heard from a lot of producers that they are trying to ramp up their wells, and in fact, I think the number of rigs has increased by about 50% over the last year. However, I think it's also supply chain issues. There's lots of supplies that go into drilling that aren't readily available, or they have a much longer lead time. I think there's labor shortages. I think a lot of the producers want to be drilling for gas right now and producing, especially in response to these high prices. But I just think that those are some of the limitations that they're seeing. But hopefully it continues to increase over the coming years.
And that seems to be a common theme as far as getting materials, getting stuff, and I'm, I guess, still baffled by that somewhat. I know we had like a 2-year flip the switch off, but is there something that you could elaborate on why it's so difficult to get materials or equipment or whatever that, I mean, did it just disappear over 2 years, or what happened?
I think it's affecting a lot of industries with supply chain issues, so that's the only assumption I can make, but I wouldn't be the expert to answer that and know when it's going to end.
You have no insider information on that. Understand. You also mentioned regulatory policies as affecting future availability of gas prices. Do state and federal policy directly affect natural gas market? Or did you mean something else relative to regulatory policy?
Yeah, so regulatory policy from the federal and state level, as we were talking, it makes it difficult to get new pipeline infrastructure. So over the years, we've had access to all this onshore shale gas, but getting it to the end user has been the issue. And so you've seen some pipeline projects such as ACP get canceled due to federal permitting issues and regulatory issues that just aren't allowing these pipelines to be built. So the new infrastructure, it is challenging going forward, and Jeff can attest to that. And so I think we are going to continue to see that.
When there's always been some federal regulatory policy, did that start last week, last year, 2 years ago, 10 years ago? I mean, what?
I think it's just got more strict recently, especially from the environmental side.
So any examples come to mind relative to policy or regulatory issues that?
Yeah, I could jump in. One example would be Mountain Valley Pipeline. That's a pipeline that was designed to move natural gas from West Virginia area, where the production is a large basin of production, to Transco Zone 5 in Virginia, and that project has been delayed multiple years, even though it's like 94% complete, just from a permitting and legal challenges to the validity of those permits, mainly by environmental groups, have delayed that project as it has gone back and have to readdress and reapply for permits and extensions with FERC in order to complete that project. I think that's one example.
So do these state, federal regulatory policies and legal issues, I guess, do they affect the volatility or the price of gas?
Yes, they do. The market areas that have limited infrastructure coming into are typically higher priced, especially during peak demand usage, which would be peak winter, peak summer.
So it's more difficult. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Are you saying it's more difficult to drill, construct pipelines, to do whatever infrastructure you need to provide gas that's there? Is that true or false?
That's correct.
Are there any particular, not trying to put you on the spot here, but are there any particular policy ideas that you or Piedmont feel strongly about that you believe balances the interest of stakeholders, customers, and would aid in providing safe, reliable, and affordable gas? If you could say, this is what we need to do, what would that be?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd be the one to answer that.
Taking the safe route, huh?
Yes, there's a process at FERC for the permitting and completion of new natural gas infrastructure, and that process has undergone a lot of scrutiny. And so I do think just the ability of the FERC process to continue and to be able to recognize the need for new infrastructure and allow that to go in a timely manner is a critical part of long-term planning, is the certainty around the permitting process. And so I think that's a critical part.
And on page 9 of your testimony, you list current storage deficit is one of the reasons for significant increases in natural gas costs. Is this the same or similar as the limited pipeline capacity?
Not necessarily. I think it has to do with prices running up and everyone's fearful of injecting the higher price gas into storage. And so currently, from about a year ago, I think we're at about a 10% deficit, and on the 5-year average, we're on about a 12% deficit. Piedmont's, our storages are in good shape. We're on target to have everything full by November 1, start of winter. So we're in good shape. But yes, the nation as a whole is experiencing a deficit, but I think it's also due to the fact that you've seen some extreme power generation burns here over the beginning of summer, and a lot of that gas is being diverted to power generation instead of going into storages.
So I think I heard two things there. One is, I guess, some hesitancy to inject higher priced gas into storage, and bigger demand from energy generation. Mm-hmm. Okay. You talk about current events on page 9, I think, and you talk about the recent volatility should be temporary, and you addressed that a little while ago. So would you say there's pretty strong belief that we will see gas prices retreat in some manner compared to what we're seeing currently?
That's what the futures, Henry Hub NYMEX futures, is showing over the next 3 years, that is projected to come down $2 to $3. So I'm assuming that production will continue to increase, and hopefully that perfect storm of global economic uncertainty that's occurring over the past year will have subsided somewhat, and we can get natural gas prices normalizing.
Does Piedmont share that view? I mean, I know that's what you say the market say,
yes.
But what were the range of the futures that formed the basis of your statement? Do you remember? Do you know?
The range from right now, you're trading between $6 and $7, and in 3 years, it's between 4 and 5.
And you answered this to a degree, but on page 9 also, you also talk about volatility will remain in the physical markets, and one of the reasons you listed is interstate pipeline capacity. And again, you may have already answered it, but what do you mean by that? Is that still related to there being a lack of interstate capacity?
Getting to the market areas where the bulk of the gas is needed and being burned during peak winter demand and peak summer demand is limited. You've got a lot of pipeline constraints, and so those areas are typically going to see much higher prices. Luckily, we're in a good position where we've got transport that's firm from multiple locations for us to diversify our supply.
So,
Mr. Breeze, would you pull the mic towards you and speak a little more into the microphone? I think folks are having trouble hearing you. Thank you.
it is very rare that I can actually hear someone and not have to do that. So are you saying that the cost is directly affected by there's a greater demand than the capacity, the carrying capacity, so you simply have to pay more because there's inadequate interstate or intrastate line capacity?
Well, there's also, for example, power generation. Electric companies don't typically have the same types of assets or require the same types of assets that natural gas LDCs do. So we are covered with capacity, or we have enough capacity to meet our firm demand during a peak winter day. And on the power generation side, they're not typically. So they're buying a lot of spot market gas in these market areas that are typically, the furthest from infrastructure or less infrastructure. So there's not quite as much gas coming in there. And when you have that much demand from a lot of companies that don't have capacity, so we can choose the lowest cost supply, whether it's coming from one pipe or another pipe, or one location or another location on the same pipe, to make sure that we're keeping our costs as low as we possibly can. But other companies that don't have the capacity don't have that option, and so they're out there in the spot market purchasing these volumes, and they're at the mercy of the market on a high demand day.
But as far as the overall picture, the big picture, ultimately, am I understanding that whoever uses gas, whether it's generators, whether it's you guys, whoever, that all that gas is still trying to come through the same lines, and price is affected by not just supply and demand, but ability to get it there, and
That's correct.
there's inadequate infrastructure to help ameliorate that cost of price of gas. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct.
Okay. And you talk about Piedmont's valuation of LNG export terminals, impact on prices. What is the reason for exports creating higher gas costs? Same thing, supply and demand, or?
Yeah, it's just taking a large volume of onshore or domestic supply, and right now you've got a high demand in Europe and Asia, so especially due to what's going on in Russia, Ukraine. And so as those volumes are exported from the U.S., that's just less supply available onshore and domestically, and so therefore it's going to put upward pressure on prices.
So Europe and other countries who are linked to Russia are getting their gas. Now it's got to come across the Atlantic to
That's correct.
get there.
And their prices are a little bit higher as well.
Probably multiple lessons to be learned there, but that's not my job. So, you also talk about on page 16 Piedmont's hedging plan. You believe it should be continued. Mr. Sullivan, I think, for ORS noted that the cumulative hedging loss was approximately $41 million. Do you think financial hedging is a proper tool for managing gas cost volatility, given the large loss balance?
Yes, I do. A lot of those losses came into play years ago, but right now our current hedging plan offers a very low cost insurance policy for our customers. And over this past year, in result with the higher prices, it came out with a net economic benefit of about $1.7 million to help keep the customers' prices down, and that equates to about 91 cents per month per customer.
Okay. And you also say that Piedmont does not pay a premium for natural gas because of suppliers' emissions reductions. So just to be clear, I understand that on the tie-breaking process, is there a situation where a lower cost option is or has been superseded by another supplier based on their emission reduction goals?
There has not, but we do put that information on RFPs and use it as a tiebreaker, and we make every effort to contract with producers who are actively trying to lower their methane emissions, as well as have long-term methane emission reduction goals.
You know, I don't know that we've ever discussed it, but I know in some other hearings that was kind of brought up. I can't remember. Embarrassed to say I've forgotten what that terminology is called. But ultimately, it seems like, if I understand that, it's simply making their, I guess, the supplier's system tighter where you have less leakage. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I've always been a tad baffled by that, and I feel like, isn't that your responsibility to keep your system tight?
I agree, and I think that's going to become the industry norm, where the responsibly sourced gas that currently is requiring a premium will become the norm across the board at some point.
Responsibly sourced gas, that's what I was trying to remember, RSG. And again, I'm not trying to say that's good or bad, but I just think the responsible thing for anybody to do is reduce your leaks, which ought to reduce your costs. And never mind. Let me move on. Mr. Patton, specifically for you on page 6 and 7 of your testimony, you discuss energy conservation measures in relation to formulating design day requirements. You go on to say that Piedmont has seen no evidence that conservation or reduced usage is occurring during design day conditions. First, when you talk of conservation measures and all, you speaking of like design, demand side management and energy efficiency programs and such?
Related to this, when talk about these efforts, we're saying that the behavior of our customers, we haven't seen under multiple days of cold weather where our customers would kind of turn down their thermostats, so what they would be using less. We've actually seen evidence with one of my exhibits where it shows after several days, they call it the heck with it hook, right? You're tired of being cold and you're just going to turn it up. So even on days that are warmer than the day before, we see higher usage because customers are, tired of being cold. So they'll turn up even more as opposed to conserving initially when that cold weather comes in.
Anyone can take cold for a little while, but I guess a little,
That's right.
little while varies, you're saying.
That's right.
So, while you didn't specifically answer, and I'm not trying to paint you in a corner, the demand side management programs, energy efficiency programs, are, try to reduce that peaking. So, again, not trying to put words in your mouth, what I'm hearing is whatever programs you're using or trying to use don't seem to affect that or are not affecting that peaking or the demand. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, I think we're seeing on that behavior of what I'm describing, those multiple cold days doesn't change that behavior, but the company does have energy efficiency programs and programs to encourage conservation through low income weatherization efforts, rebates, education, mail outs to help customers understand what they can do to weatherize their homes and provide that assistance so that to help keep their energy bills low. So that's a separate.
I understand, but I'm saying whatever programs exist, good, bad, whatever the reason is, none of those seem to take care of the demand or the peak demand, especially during those multiple cold days.
That's right. We are seeing growth in that. We are seeing over a period of time as furnaces and other equipment become more efficient, we do see usage per customer maybe decreasing somewhat, but on those peak days we are seeing just what you described, how that behavior is such that we're seeing that growth in peak over time.
So relative to, I guess, demand, not peak, but demand, have you seen any difference in the slope of the growth line, or is it pretty much the same? Do these, any programs that P&G has, do they seem to affect the slope of that growth line?
I would see the slope of the growth line. Like we said, we have seen growth in the past several years, 1.5 to 1.6%, just annual growth in customers and demand. But we haven't really seen that much of a change in the slope as far as the usage during those peak periods over time.
So what I think I'm hearing is The Best Laid Plans of Mice and Men. Good book if you ever want to read it. Try as you might, it's just hard to change behavior.
That's right.
I believe that's it. If I think anything else, I'll ask you before she tells me no. Thank you.
Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see folks in person again. Mr. Patton, I think that this would probably be best directed towards you. You mentioned that improvements are being made to the Transco line. I think you said in Zone 5, and you all have contracted for additional capacity. And I think you said that that would be coming online in 2024.
That's right.
So has that been fully permitted? Is it under construction? Okay, so that's not going to end up being another Atlantic Coast pipeline situation. It's best anybody can tell it's going to happen. Is
Right.
that correct?
It is in the FERC process right now. Transco filed, I believe from memory, in May, filed with their 7C application with FERC to kick off that permitting process. So it is going under the review period right now, and as it goes through that process, we're still anticipating a December 2024 in service. But right now, it's in the FERC hands, and construction hasn't started until they get that notice to proceed from FERC.
Okay. So that's still some risk there then.
Yes, there is some timing risk depending on the FERC review process.
Okay. So if Piedmont were to decide that more storage would be beneficial to help with the capacity situation, would that be subject to both federal and state regulations? Let's just say you decided it'd be helpful to have a storage facility in, let's say, Greenville, Spartanburg area, would all in one state. Would that still be subject to both federal and state, or just?
Well, I think it depends on who's building it and the type of infrastructure. Whether if it's a interstate type project like Pine Needle, there's construction and permitting associated with any infrastructure project. I think it just depends on the type and the location and who's constructing it. I mentioned in my testimony how Piedmont's Robinson LNG facility came online during the review period, and so that's something that was constructed by Piedmont in order to provide peaking service, but that went through the state process from a construction permitting.
Okay. So I know the company's had storage for a long time, and owned by the company, and I guess contracted built by the company. So I think what I'm hearing you say then, that it is possible for storage facilities to be constructed and owned by Piedmont that could perhaps just go through state and local permitting. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, like I'm referring to LNG storage. For that. But just in general in the market, there is the ability for interstate pipelines, other developers to construct, natural gas storage in the ground type storage fields, and then for others to contract with.
Okay.
That would go under like a FERC process as well as the state and federal permitting.
Well, is the company evaluating those sorts of options? Anything that you all are thinking about doing or trying to evaluate? Is it worth doing? Or again, once you get outside of, let's just say outside of the state of South Carolina control, then things get much, much more complicated to make it all the way through the process. Any thoughts, comments on that?
I mean, the company's, continually looks at our portfolio to look at, how much storage we hold, how much transportation, is there any opportunities? Right now, as far as evaluating any other, projects, I'm not aware. Like I said, we just had our Robinson LNG come online. We are with contract with Transco for the SRE project. And so, don't have, as I can tell, any future plans in the immediate term for additional, storage, but it's something we do evaluate whether we're going to contract or build over time.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. That's all I had.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, any other questions? Ms. McGrath, any redirect?
I think my microphone is still on. Just one redirect question, really more for clarification, directed to Mr. Patton. Would you say it's fair to say that the MVP project is distinguishable from Southside in terms of the scope of the project, and that may affect or make the FERC review process slightly easier or quicker, if you will?
Yeah, I would agree with that. The Southside Reliability Project is a project that involves the least environmental impacts of the options that that we reviewed. It's electric compression, There's no looping or additional pipeline along right-of-ways. It doesn't go through any national forests or sensitive areas, and so there's a big difference in the SRE project versus MVP, which is as you know, a large interstate project that's gone through multiple states, multiple sensitive areas, and so yeah, there's a different risk profile. I would say the SRE has a much lower risk profile than MVP.
And in fact, if memory serves correct, the comment period for the FERC application recently closed. And were there any protests or significant opposition filed in response to that application filing?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. McGrath. ORS, anything further?
No, Madam Chair.
Commissioners? Hearing none. Gentlemen, thank you for your testimony this morning. You may stand down.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. That concludes Piedmont's direct case.
Thank you, Ms. McGrath. Let's take a 10-minute break while we reset for ORS's case. Thank you. We'll be back at 11:18. Thank you. Welcome back to the Public Service Commission of South Carolina for the continuation of the hearing in docket 2022-4-G. Let's take a roll call of commissioners. Present in the hearing room, we have Commissioner J. Williams, Vice Chair Powers, Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Caston, Chair Belser, and with us virtually, we have Commissioner Irvin and Commissioner C. Williams. Ms. McGrath, do we need to have a housekeeping matter?
Yes, Madam Chair. My apologies. I failed to move or request that we move Ms. Tomlinson's pre-filed settlement testimony into the record as if given orally from the stand. Her testimony was pre-filed on July 8th, 2022, so I'd like to request that it be moved into the record.
Ms. Tomlinson's pre-filed settlement testimony will be entered into the record as if read from the stand.
Thank you. Nothing further from Piedmont.
Thank you. Ms. Given?
Madam Chair, permission to approach the podium and call ORS as witnesses from that vantage point.
Certainly.
Thank you.
My policy is attorneys where you're most comfortable. I know it's difficult to stay seated sometimes and talk in here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, ORS would call Daniel Sullivan and Michael Seaman Wen to the stand, who will, with your permission, present as a panel.
That's fine. Gentlemen, please approach and be sworn in by the court reporter.
If you would raise your right hands, please. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan, we'll start with you if that's all right. Good morning.
Okay. Good morning.
Please state your full name and occupation for the record.
My name's Daniel Sullivan. I'm employed by the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff as the Director of the Audit Department.
Thank you. Are you the same Daniel Sullivan who prepared or caused to be prepared 10 pages of pre-filed direct testimony in this case, which was filed on June 16th, 2022?
Yes, I am.
Do you have any changes, edits, or corrections to your direct testimony?
No, I do not.
If I asked you those same questions today as those posed in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Madam Chair, at this time, I would move that the pre-filed direct testimony of Daniel Sullivan be entered into the record of this proceeding as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Sullivan's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Sullivan, did you also prepare or cause to be prepared with your direct testimony 3 exhibits marked as DFS 1, DFS 2, and DFS 3?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes, edits, or corrections to your exhibits?
No, I do not.
Madam Chair, at this time, I would move that Mr. Sullivan's exhibits DFS 1 through DFS 3 be admitted into the record of this proceeding as a composite hearing exhibit.
Mr. Sullivan's pre-filed exhibits DFS 1 through DFS 3 will be admitted as a composite exhibit marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 4 and entered into the record of this case.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Sullivan, have you prepared a summary of your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes, I have.
Would you please present that summary to the Commission?
Sure. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. The purpose of my testimony is to set forth the findings resulting from ORS's examination of the company's purchased gas deferred account, storage inventory activity, and hedging account activity for the period April 1st, 2021 through March 31st, 2022. ORS has included the results of our examination in exhibits DFS 1 through exhibit DFS 3. Exhibit DFS 1 presents for each month the components which contribute to the company's over-under collection in the purchased gas deferred account for the review period. Exhibit DFS 2 summarizes the company's gas storage inventory activity during the review period. Exhibit DFS 3 details the results of the company's hedging activity for the review period, as well as the cumulative loss since the inception of the program. Based on our examination, it is the opinion of ORS that the overcollection balance in Piedmont's purchased gas deferred account as of March 31st, 2022 of $5,251,882, as shown on company witness Tomlinson's exhibit MBT1, is accurately stated.
Does that conclude your summary?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Mr. Seaman Wen, we'll move to you if that's all right. Good morning. Please state your full name and occupation for the record.
My name is Michael Seaman Wen. I'm the Deputy Director of Energy Operations for the South Carolina Office of Regulatory Staff.
Thank you. And are you the same Michael Seaman Wen who prepared or caused to be prepared 9 pages of pre-filed direct testimony that was filed in this proceeding on June 16th, 2022?
Yes.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your pre-filed direct testimony?
No, I do not.
If I asked you the same questions today as those posed in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Madam Chair, at this time, I would ask that the pre-filed direct testimony of Michael Seaman Wen be entered into the record of this proceeding as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Seaman Wen's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given from the stand.
Mr. Seaman Wen, have you prepared a summary of your pre-filed direct testimony?
Yes, I have.
Would you please present that summary to the Commission?
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and Commission. The purpose of my testimony is to present ORS's findings and recommendations regarding the review and examination of Piedmont Natural Gas Company during the review period. First, ORS found the company's natural gas purchasing policies to be reasonable. Second, ORS found that Piedmont managed its hedging program in compliance with prior Commission orders. Third, ORS determined Piedmont adhered to its Commission-approved gas cost recovery mechanism tariff. Fourth, ORS found that the company is prepared to meet its obligations for the upcoming winter's projected firm customers' requirements. Subsequent to the filing of my direct testimony, a settlement agreement was entered into between the company and ORS. The settlement agreement is offered as a fair, reasonable, and full resolution of the parties' issues in this proceeding. Further, ORS believes that the settlement agreement is in the public's interest of South Carolina and respectfully requests that the Commission approve the settlement agreement as presented.
Thank you. Does that conclude the summary of your direct testimony?
Yes, it does.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman Wen. Madam Chair, at this time, Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Seaman Wen are available for questions from Piedmont's counsel, if any, as well as questions from the commissioners.
Thank you, Ms. Given. Ms. McGrath?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions for either Mr. Seaman Wen or Mr. Sullivan? Commissioner Thomas?
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here today and answer questions. Mr. Sullivan, on page 5 of your direct testimony, you discussed the secondary market sharing component of the PGA, and only margins received from Duke are retained at the 70%. At the 100%. Is that correct?
Correct.
And do you believe that 75% is still appropriate for other off-system sales and capacity release transactions?
Yes, sir. It encourages the company to sell excess capacity when they have it, and also provides a benefit to customers through the reduced cost of the demand. But it also gives that incentive to the company to pursue the sale of that gas or that capacity.
Okay. And but the customers are paying for the capacity and infrastructure and gas costs through the rates, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right, and on page 6 of your direct testimony, is supplier refund. So are those supplier refunds allocated to South Carolina using the same design day percentage as the demand costs?
Yes, they are.
Okay. And just in connection with the hedging program and the $41 million loss, is it your opinion still that the hedging program is beneficial to customers?
The point of my review is to determine that the hedging costs are reported appropriately. I'll defer to Mr. Seaman Wen here on his opinion on the hedging program.
Okay. Any thoughts there?
Commissioner, first off, the company has adhered to the hedging program as approved by the commission. I do believe that a hedging program for Piedmont is to the benefit of the customers. It's, as the company alluded to, it is a low price insurance policy against price volatility. So yes, Commissioner, I think that it is appropriate for the company to continue using it.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioners, any other questions? Mr. Sullivan, were you present in the hearing room earlier when I asked questions of witness Tomlinson?
Yes, I was.
And you heard me ask questions. Did you hear me ask questions about the calculation of the interest rate?
Yes, I did.
And would you agree with me that I misstated?
I'm not sure where the .65 came from, but I don't believe it's tied
Listen.
to the RSA. Maybe Mr. Seaman Wynn
I was
knows.
going to say, I was going to ask you to correct me if you would. Mr. Seaman Wynn, can you correct me?
Yes, ma'am. I believe that was part of the negotiations between ORS and the company and has been approved by the commission.
It was pursuant to a commission order, not the RSA. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any other questions? Hearing none. Ms. Given, any redirect?
No redirect, Madam Chair. And at this time, that concludes the presentation of ORS's case in chief.
Thank you, Ms. Given. Gentlemen, you may stand down. Ms. McGrath, anything further?
Nothing from Piedmont.
Ms. Given, anything further?
Nothing from the Office of Regulatory Staff, Madam Chair.
I believe y'all agreed on a date for proposed orders. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
July 28th. Is that correct?
Correct, Madam Chair.
Okay. By close of business, preferably.
Yes, Madam Chair, noted.
If there's nothing further to come before the commission in this hearing, we will close this matter. I do thank attorneys and witnesses for appearing and both in person and virtually, and as always, appreciate your thoroughness and your professionalism. Thank you very much. This hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.